Richard the First was a bad son, a bad husband, and a bad king. Sir Stephen Runciman. Despite having been celebrated for centuries as one of England's greatest kings, Richard the Lionheart has in recent years come under fire with accusations of unnecessary cruelty, incompetence in administration, a lack of concern for England, and being generally characterized as a vain and narcissistic man focused only on personal glory at the expense of his people, with many describing Richard as a great warrior but bad king. Upon closer examination of Richard, and the context of the time period shows these claims to be shallow and lacking any real understanding of medieval culture or history. Richard has been accused of either showing a lack of concern for England or outright despising it, even supposedly claiming to be willing to sell it off, and further emphasizing this point with the fact he did not know English and spent only 6 months of his reign there. This point completely ignores the context of medieval politics and culture. Ever since the conquest of William the Conqueror, who originated from Normandy, the nobility of England spoke primarily French rather than English, which was held as the language of the commoners. Likewise, Richard was not just the King of England, but also the Duke of Aquitaine and Normandy, holding large swaths of land in France in what was known as the Angevin Empire. Because his French territories were much more vulnerable than England, it made sense why he primarily resided in France, just as his father spent only a decade out of his 34-year reign in England. It is doubtful Richard held any resentment to England, but because of his ancestral claims, he had to prioritize France over England. Likewise, his father committed to being a Crusader shortly before his death, and so Richard had to fulfill his father's obligation, taking him to the Caucasus and the Mediterranean. Despite this, Richard did not neglect England and appointed Archbishop Hubert Walter and his mother Eleanor of Aquitaine to ensure the kingdom's stability. The fact England went through Richard's entire reign without any significant turmoil is a testament to Walter and Eleanor's leadership. Even the infamous King's Ransom, which did in fact lead to taxes being raised in England to free Richard, did not in fact bankrupt England despite the common claim, given the kingdom did not have any reported financial troubles until King John's disastrous campaign against France in 1210. Richard today is often portrayed as a brute, only focused on battle and lacking any real administrative ability, essentially being just a great warrior but a poor king or general. The depiction of medieval warfare in popular media will romanticize and water down the intricacies of what it actually took to lead an entire army. It was not merely holding your sword forward on horseback as swarms of men charged into battle. Commanding an army is just as much about resource management as it is battle tactics, something Richard excelled at. Richard utilized his vast empire to fund his adventures without putting excessive strain on any one part. As historian John Gillingham explained, Richard won his wars not simply by deeds of prowess, but also by being able to transform the economic resources of the Angevin Empire into military supplies and ensure they were at the right place at the right time. In other words, by sheer administrative competence. Likewise, his ability to form alliances with Flanders and Toulouse against Philip Auguste of France also shows his diplomatic capabilities. It is clear Richard was far more than just a great warrior and had all the qualities of a great king. Richard has been accused of being a cruel, uncaring, and narcissistic man who only cared for his own image and glory above all else. This claim comes from two false premises. The first being his involvement in the Crusades was meant solely for his personal glory. In the secular academic circles of modern England and America, this is not a surprising interpretation. People of the modern era failed to comprehend the true spiritual aspect of the Holy Wars. Ignoring the previously mentioned fact that Richard was fulfilling his late father's obligation, the Crusades were a bigger event than any one man, and Richard understood this. He was forced to put aside generations of bad blood with his arch-rival Philip Auguste for the greater good of Christianity. The second false premise comes from the faulty depiction of kings being distant and uncaring tyrants, using soldiers merely as pawns. Richard was not this. He was noted for taking exceptionally great care of his men, and although he was strict on discipline, he always did it for their own safety. He never charged his army with excessive marches or ignored the critical need for supplies. Richard always put the needs of his men first and foremost, understanding they were the key to military victory. When accounting for the culture and true record, it is clear to see why Richard was immortalized as a great figure. He demonstrated not only a great mind for warfare, but also politics, diplomacy, and administration. All of these factors would lead one to conclude he was a great king, and certainly earned him the title of the Lionheart. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time.